It began as a grand and completely ordinary maritime voyage through the open. See three young adventurous friends named Leo, Arthur, and Thomas decided to seek their ultimate fortune and stepped aboard their magnificent historic wooden vessel, carefully charting a long course into the unknown deep blue. As endless hours turned into days, the distant familiar coastline completely vanished from their sight. Leo and his two companions were now entirely at the absolute mercy of the vast, unpredictable Atlantic, completely and totally isolated from the rest of the living modern world. But the deep ocean holds dark, ancient secrets. It always prefers to keep hidden from mankind. On the second quiet evening, the ship's mechanical compass suddenly spun out of control, and a chilling, unnatural silence filled the pitch-dark, foggy air, with no bright stars left to guide them through the night and the compass completely dead. Arthur and Thomas realized they were entirely blind as an invisible, powerful magnetic force steadily pulled their wooden ship toward dangerous, uncharted territory. Then, without any warning, the deep darkness split open above them, a monstrous, terrifying storm appearing from absolutely nowhere trapped the fragile wooden vessel in a violent, swirling vortex of howling wind and towering destructive waves. In the terrifying and completely merciless howling wind, their desperate screams for help were entirely swallowed by the deafening roar of the dark ocean as Leo, Arthur, and Thomas fought with every single ounce of their remaining strength against a cruel, raging sea that had already claimed their ultimate destiny. Then came the definitive, horrifying sound of tearing ancient timber planks and crushing heavy metal hardware as their historic medieval vessel was driven violently by the massive waves directly against jagged, hidden rocks. And then a sudden, heavy, and absolute silence arrived over the water. The monstrous storm vanished just as quickly and mysteriously as it had first appeared, leaving behind nothing but the cold morning mist and a shattered, tragic dream upon the lonely shore. Washed ashore by the unforgiving, freezing cold waves, the three young companions slowly opened their heavy eyes, bruised and completely exhausted from the brutal struggle, but against all human odds and expectations, they were still alive. With no signal, no coordinates to guide them, and absolutely no physical way back, they had successfully survived the grand destructive wrath of the Atlantic, only to find themselves completely trapped on a mysterious, uncharted island that simply wasn't on any known maritime map. As the dim dawn broke, Leo bravely led the small group into the incredibly deep and dark jungle, looking for any source of food, but the strange, twisted trees and an eerie, unnatural silence made them feel they were being closely watched. Deep within the heart of the mysterious island, Thomas suddenly stopped dead in his tracks, pointing his trembling hand at a massive ancient stone wall covered in cryptic symbols that looked hundreds of years old. These haunting ancient engravings looked exactly like a dark warning from past lost sailors who were trapped here centuries ago, sending a chilling shiver down Arthur's spine as they finally realized they were definitely not the first to crash. Realizing that no human rescue was ever coming, they knew they had to quickly adapt to survive, so they gathered long, heavy wooden logs and massive jungle leaves to start building a primitive shelter against the island's unknown dangers. Working tirelessly day and night using only strong ropes made of wild vines and their own bare hands, they finally completed a sturdy and solid wooden cabin to completely protect themselves from the harsh, unpredictable elements. Days bled into weeks, and weeks slowly turned into long months as the three loyal friends established a strict daily routine of hunting and gathering just to keep themselves alive. The uncharted island eventually became their silent prison, and the initial hope of being rescued slowly began to fade away from their once hopeful eyes as they stared at the endless empty horizon. Leo meticulously kept a tally mark marked into a sturdy wooden post inside their cabin, and with a heavy, aching heart, he carved the final definitive line marking exactly 1 full year since their fateful crash. One misty morning, looking closely at their long matted hair, ragged medieval clothes, and completely exhausted faces, Arthur spoke the words they all secretly thought it was time to either leave this place or certainly die here. They bravely walked back to the foggy shore where the weathered wreck of their original medieval ship still lay, deciding with one mind to recycle its powerful aged planks to build a new small escape boat. With Thomas carefully designing the frame in the sand and Leo expertly cutting the weathered planks, they spent weeks of brutal labor building a primitive wooden sailboat using their old canvas sails. It was a completely desperate gamble, a fragile and tiny handmade wooden boat against the massive, merciless ocean, but it was truly their only remaining chance at winning back their freedom. On a quiet and cold morning, they pushed their handmade craft into the breaking waves, leaving the mysterious island and all its dark ancient secrets behind them forever. The first few days on the wide open sea were calm, but soon their limited freshwater supply completely ran out, leaving them horribly parched and burning under a merciless scorching sun. Starving and terribly dehydrated, Thomas grew far too weak to even hold while Leo and Arthur stared out at the endless blue water, completely losing their grip on reality. Terrifying hallucinations began to completely take over their fragile minds as the burning sun and relentless waves made them feel like they were sailing through a sea of frozen ghosts. On the long sixth day of their desperate escape, with their throats completely dry and all human strength gone, all three friends collapsed together onto the hard wooden deck, drifting into a deep unconsciousness. Just as complete darkness was about to forever claim them, a massive and towering shadow slowly loomed over their small, fragile boat. It was a passing ancient merchant ship. The alert crew of the giant ship spotted the drifting handmade wreckage, quickly pulling Leo, Arthur, and Thomas from the cruel jaws of certain death just in time. They finally returned to civilization and fully resumed their normal lives, but the haunting memory of the wooden ship and that dark, uncharted island would remain locked in their minds until midnight.